8:30 a.m. I call the April 19th Finance Committee Council Workshop to order and ask the City Clerk to call the roll.
Alternate Member Williams,
Here.
Vice Chair Scutia Brayton,
Here.
and Chairperson Wright.
Here. We all stand and pledge allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Anybody in the public have any public comment on anything that's not on the agenda? You have 3 minutes. Mr. Murphy.
Good morning, City Manager, City Council. Appreciate you guys having us this morning. You know, since we're not technically on the agenda, I just wanted to come here this morning and greet you all, and more importantly, talk about something I think that's really urgent we can all do together. We want to thank you for being involved. I'm here representing Graffiti USA Museum. My name's Chris Murphy. I live on Edgebrook, longtime Modestan, and we want to do something now that really will take us into the next level of our community. We appreciate being included in the first round, but since we have applied for the last time, a couple of changes have happened at the museum, which are all positive. One thing is economic development, super important. Anything you invest in, you want to make sure you get your money back. Number two, you want to show that there's something that can be built right here in our community that's going to change the demographics of the community, and that's something that we're uniquely positioned. We will change the perception of Modesto, not here in town, but outside. We're already having that impact now. The Modesto's cruise culture has changed because of what we're doing with the Almond Blossom Cruise. The Modesto Marathon used the cruise as their theme, so we're already changing perceptions, and we're only partially open. What's happened since we applied last time is we have been designated a California Welcome Center. This is an urgent request because we want to be open before Graffiti Summer starts. We have to build it. We have to accelerate our plans. We've got over 30 companies working with us in partnership to build this thing. We have donors across the community for a 5-year build out. However, we've got to make this welcome station happen, because if we do, signs on the freeway show up. We'll be promoted by the state of California. The only other welcome station is in Fairfield at the Jelly Belly factory, and we can represent Central California, and it can happen as early as June for Graffiti Summer. So what we want to do is we've proven that we are a community gatherer. Organizations are using our facilities, Stanislaus County, the City of Modesto, Kiwanis, service groups. We've had national tours come through here. The Good Guys car tour brought people from all over the world or the United States to Modesto because there was a graffiti museum. So those things are happening already, so we've delivered. One thing we want to do is make sure that those travel and tourism people spend the night. That's the game changer. The museum and what we're offering downtown will make people spend the night here, which changes the economic multipliers of what we're doing. We want to open that door to travel and tourism. We are also working closely with the City of Modesto on the whole North 9th Street redevelopment and streetscape. So our team is already working with the city to beautify North 9th and extend the reach of downtown Modesto up North 9th, our historic 99 highway. And so we've already had matching requests tied to what, if we can get on the second round of ARPA is what we're requesting. We are requesting $500,000 from the second round of ARPA, and that will be matched by a donor in our community. We will build this. We will deliver directly back to this community. It's an investment. You'll have something to show for it. We'll be proud of what we're doing, and our brand of Cruise Modesto and what we are will go nationwide thanks to being a welcome station. So that's what's different. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, we appreciate it being included in the resolution this afternoon.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Chris.
Any other public comment? Mr. Sanders, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. John Sanders, lifelong member of the City of Modesto, past chair of the Graffiti Museum and the current board member of the Graffiti USA Classic Car Museum. First of all, I want to thank the generosity of the city in the past for helping the museum move along as well as it has. This museum has come from donations of all sorts. The city's been a big part of that. Local businesses have been a huge part of that. And we have a need for continuing for the city support, financial support. We just completed a fire sprinkler system, which was a little over $250,000. We're getting ready to do bathrooms, permanent bathrooms, heating, cooling, you name it. I think all of you have been out to the museum. You've seen that it's a structure. Every dollar that goes into that museum from donations goes into bricks and mortar, so to speak. We have no paid people. It's all volunteers. And so every dollar that the city and others donate goes to some particular item to make the museum move forward. So I just thank you for your past support, and I hope you'll see fit to continue to support us with your consideration of today and moving forward beyond today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Next. Mr. Russell, welcome.
So Cecil Russell, and I'm a board member of the Graffiti Museum, also the executive director, general manager of the facility. So a couple of key things that I want to tell you. First of all, like the other two speakers, I want to thank you for the first round of funding that the city was able to garner for us to do the work that we've done. John mentioned that it's about $250,000. It's actually, we spent the $500,000 is the sprinkler system was a lot more involved than what we actually believed originally, and plus the reinforcement of all the trusses in that. So we spent $500,000 so far on that, and we've spent probably another $200,000-300,000 on other improvements that you would never notice. They're all infrastructure type things. And I think one of the key things about the investment of that money is it's all spent locally. So, some of the other projects and stuff that have happened around here, we have to go outside to do that, whether it be the city doing it or other people. But all of the contractors and people that we've used have all been local craftsmen and that. And when I say local, not just here in Modesto, but probably as far as Oakdale and that. And I think that's important that, as Chris mentioned, when we invest the money locally. And so it turns over because it creates income for those companies, for their employees and that. But this game changer that actually has only occurred over the last 3 or 4 months for the California Welcome Center will be a huge game changer to get people into Modesto. And to me, the museum, what I think a lot of people lose sight of, it's not just about a building with cars. It's about economic development. And it starts with tourism. And so from the tourism standpoint, we bring people in, and our goal is to keep them here. So we would really appreciate if we could get some additional help from you to complete our tasks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cecil.
Anyone else in public comment? Anybody online? I don't see anyone online. So we will close public comment at this time and move on to deferred maintenance presentation. Welcome, Lori.
Good morning.
And I might add that we have Councilmember Chris Rickey is online and has posted, I believe. Is that true? And then has the mayor posted? Have we heard? No.
She has no.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Chair Wright. Good morning. Good morning, members of the Finance Committee.
Morning.
Chris asked me.
All right. So this morning, we're going to start out the budget workshops with a presentation on deferred maintenance. Again, my name's Lori Smith. I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhoods. So we'll just start out with the number. The total estimated deferred maintenance for parks and facilities in our department is $106.7 million. Just an overview of what our department inventory is. It includes 76 parks, 54 playgrounds, 55 restrooms, 31 soccer fields, 33 tennis courts. We have pickleball courts. Of course, all of that includes parking lots, shade structures, 17 miles of Class 1 trails, 5 community centers, 5 rental facilities, 3 historical properties, 2 golf courses, a convention center, and of course, John Thurman Field. And this is a map that shows that we have over 1,246 acres of green space that include our 76 parks. Those are the green rectangle or square-shaped boxes throughout the map. Our park system includes 2 regional parks, 8 community parks, 54 neighborhood parks, and 12 parks identified as parks or parklets, in addition to 9 trails. So for our park system alone, the deferred maintenance is approximately $83.2 million, and it includes items such as restrooms, concrete repair or replacement, playground replacement, tree maintenance, park lighting, tennis courts, basketball courts, our ball fields, soccer fields, turf and irrigation systems, ADA improvements, signs, benches, and picnic tables. So we'll go through these one at a time real briefly. The deferred maintenance on our ADA improvements, which includes repairs and improvements at all our park amenities to make them accessible for the disabled, is approximately $4.4 million. This includes new pathways, ramps to existing park features, benches, picnic tables, playgrounds, and more to ensure they're ADA accessible. And it should be noted here that when we do the Measure H presentation, you'll see that there's a proposed item to begin addressing this in 12 parks in the coming year. Turf reductions and irrigation systems. The turf reduction deferred maintenance is approximately $5.3 million, and turf and irrigation renovation is over $18 million. Many of the irrigation systems in our older parks are in need of replacement. There's quite a few areas in our parks that we could reduce water by eliminating turf altogether. We did receive ARPA funding of approximately $225,000, which will complete turf removal in 4 of our parks, Chrysler, Marin Estates, Orchard, and Isla Loma. That'll save us over $4.2 million of, not dollars, 4.2 gallons of water annually. And we're also working with our friends in utility for an urban drought grant that'll expand that number of parks that we're able to remove turf from the 4 I just mentioned to 14. In addition to that, the Prop 68 grant we have for Chavez and Martin Luther King, as well as, we'll do irrigation repair with the Prop 68 for Chavez and King Park, and then we're working with utilities on the Pike Park project. In our, deferred maintenance in our playgrounds is approximately $6.9 million, and this includes the repair or replacement of damaged, deteriorated, and removed playgrounds. There's currently 20 playgrounds in our park systems that are older than 20 years of age, and it should be noted that a playground begins to significantly deteriorate between 20 and 25 years after installation. Again, during the Measure H presentation, you'll see that there's a proposal for playground equipment replacement at 8 parks in the coming year. So with regard to our play courts, which include tennis, basketball, volleyball, and horseshoes, there's a deferred maintenance estimate of approximately $6.43 million, and this is for the repair of damaged and deteriorated play courts. All of our 33 tennis courts are in need of repair. We currently have an MOU with Modesto City Schools for the resurfacing of Davis and Downey, and that includes 12 courts. I believe Downey has already been completed. And we have requested in the Measure H a funding proposal to resurface the remaining 21 tennis courts in the coming year. You should also be aware that resurfacing is a temporary solution. It is expected to last approximately 5 years before another resurfacing or full replacement is required. But the benefit of resurfacing now is that we can get all the courts to an acceptable playing level and then work on longer-term solutions. Restrooms. Our deferred maintenance for restrooms is approximately $9 million, and this is for the repair of damaged and deteriorated restrooms. You probably remember from my inventory list that we have 55 restrooms in our 76 parks, and there are at least 15 of them that are in need of replacement, removal, or major repair. You can see from these pictures some of the damage that our park restrooms are experiencing, which include rusting in some of our metal restrooms and dry rot on the roofs and general damage as a whole. In the Measure H funding, we are proposing to replace 3 restrooms in the coming year, and those are at Mark Twain, Robertson Road, and Griseda. Sports fields and lighting. The sports fields repair and renovation is estimated at approximately $4.5 million, and then park lighting is over $14 million. Most of our sports fields are in need of major repairs or replacement, and you can see that on the pictures in this slide. Lighting in the park, which includes sports court lighting, has been vandalized or needs to be augmented with additional lights for safety. We have proposed Measure H funding to get lights back up and running at all the tennis courts, and currently have lighting to add security lighting through 4 of our parks, Chrysler, Robertson Road, Pike, and Marshall, in the coming year. Shade structures and picnic pavilions have a deferred maintenance amount of approximately $1.4 million, and this amount will cover the repair of damaged and deteriorated shade structures and picnic pavilions. There are currently 3 shade structures that are in need of replacement at Downey Davis and East Loma, and we're currently working on a project that is funded by grants and local funds to replace the shade structure at Downey Park. Concrete walkways is approximately $4.2 million, and this includes the repair of damaged walkways and ADA improvements. This is on pathways, ramps, tripping hazards, and we are proposing Measure H funding to start addressing these problems in 12 of our parks in the coming year. Park trees has a deferred maintenance estimate of approximately $1.6 million. All of the parks have dead or unhealthy trees that need attention due to the years of drought and minimal watering. In addition, the park trees are maturing in general, and some need thinning just to remain healthy. We were able to complete tree maintenance in about 10 parks this year as a result of ARPA funding, and we did do an additional 5 parks as a result of the Quick Win Measure H approved by Council earlier this year. In the Measure H funding proposal coming up later this morning, we are proposing to address an additional 30 parks over the next fiscal year. Parking lots. Our parking lots are in serious need of repair. The estimated amount is $4.4 million. All of the parking lots in our park system need repairs, replacement, or resurfacing. We're currently working to replace Downey parking lot, and that is as a result of ARPA funding approved in Phase 1, and you will see some Measure H proposed funding for restriping, resurfacing of 6 additional parking lots in the coming year. Signs and benches, deferred maintenance on signs is approximately just short of $1 million. Benches and table is $1.4 million, and there will be some Measure H funding proposed later this morning to address some of those issues. And then we will move on to the other areas of our facilities. As you can see, we have the community centers, rental facilities, historical properties, Center Plaza, John Thurman, and the golf courses. So our community centers, rental facilities, and historical properties, our community centers have an estimate of approximately $1.4 million. You can see the facilities that includes on the slide. Rental facilities are approximately 1.3, and the historical properties an estimate of over $3 million. The Measure H funding that you'll hear more about later has a proposal to renovate Maddox Youth Center at the same time that Chavez Park is undergoing its Prop 68 renovation. In addition, all of these facilities will be part of the Public Works Facility Assessment that I believe has been referenced. The Modesto Center Plaza has approximately $4.9 million in deferred maintenance. You can see the list of items that need to be addressed. This certainly isn't complete, does not include the roof. There are other things that I'm sure we're not aware of due to the age of the building, but it'll be included in the facility assessment, and so we can get a more accurate number. All right. John Thurman Field. John Thurman Field, everyone knows, is quite old and has undergone 2 renovations over the last 25 years that I know of. And the estimate on that is quite large, between $2 and $10 million. Obviously, there are a lot of factors that will influence that, and we are in negotiations at this time, so we're not prepared to identify a solid number on that. Municipal golf courses. As you know, Muni is no longer operating as a golf course, so we only have Dryden and Creekside. Dryden estimate is approximately $2.7 million of deferred maintenance. That does not include the clubhouse. A new clubhouse was being built and is in the design phase, and then Creekside $1 million. And you can see the items that it includes: irrigation, tree maintenance, restrooms, as well as parking lot. So this is an estimate of all the ADA upgrades needed at the various facilities. You can see the total is $2.6 million, and the individual amounts for each facility are identified on the slide. This will also be included in the facility assessment being conducted by Public Works. So our total is $106.7 million. This is the breakdown for it. Quite an overwhelming amount. We clearly don't have the funding for all of this, but we do have some funding sources that are going to assist. As you know, every year the city, as a result of its agreement with the Nuts, contributes $120,000 for capital improvements. We did receive some ARPA funding, both in Phase 1 and Phase 2, to address some of these issues. I've referenced them in the slide. And we are requesting funding from Measure H, both for the deferred maintenance. We're requesting 6.1. We'll talk in more detail about that later. And then the current tree maintenance request of $750,000. So the total of funding that we are identifying is $10.9 million. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Lori. Is there any questions from committee members? Go ahead.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rosa. You have any questions?
Well, that's, yeah. So Lori, wow. So I like your last slide where you break down the need in terms of funding buckets. Do you have a priority list? As you were going through them all, I was creating my own priority of what I thought would be a priority. So you have a priority list, and is that how you're going about trying to secure the funding? Top priority first and then down the road?
So we do have a list, and it breaks these items down by age of the equipment, what the level of severity is, and those items are used in discussion with the city manager's office as we put together a list of things that we're going to tackle first. In addition to that, my staff has put together both a 5-year plan to address the deferred maintenance, as well as a 5-year preventative maintenance plan to help avoid getting into this situation in the future. So yes.
So what is the total cost of your priority list?
I can bring that back.
It's maybe a quarter or a half of your.
So what we're proposing for the first year for deferred maintenance is $6.1 million.
We'll see, Joe said we'll see that in the Measure H presentation. Okay,
Correct.
perhaps all that will come out more later on in the day. Okay, thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Lori. I have one question real quick before I turn it over to Chris. Councilmember Ricky, is your ADA one of your top priorities?
Yes.
That's one of the top, good.
That's $2.6 million for the ADA. That's great. I'm glad to see that's one of your top priorities. Councilmember Chris Rickey, please.
Thanks, Chair. So just, I guess overall, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this, is like the goal just kind of to rebuild everything that we've got already? Is that kind of what you're saying here?
Well, the purpose of this presentation is to identify for the council what the total cost of deferred maintenance is in the park system. Our approach is to address those with the greatest need and do it in a 5 to 7 year plan. Is it 7 or 5? 5.
That sounds good. I think that sounds right to me. I'm just not sure overall if the right strategy is just to rebuild what we've got. I think it's kind of going to sound strange, but I think it's actually an opportunity for us to analyze the current usage of the different kinds of amenities that we offer at the parks. For example, if certain sports, like the horseshoe pit's a good example at the Boy Scout clubhouse, right? There was a horseshoe pit there. In the 40s and 50s and 60s of the last century, horseshoes were extremely popular. And then they just kind of sat vacant for 40 years where no one used them, right? And so I think that we have an opportunity here, rather than maybe fixing a bunch of fields that maybe aren't being used, we could, instead of investing millions of dollars to bring those back, we could find the uses of today for those fields to get more activity in our parks. Because right now we have a lot of parks that just basically aren't used much, and that tend to be overrun by bad activity sometimes. So anyway, I think that Measure H is just this money is an opportunity for us to kind of invest in the future. And I'm also very concerned about the idea of investing in John Thurman Field, or even considering it right now, because I'm not sure that we have a commitment from the baseball team to play for us long term. So investing millions of dollars in that facility seems questionable to me. I think we should really think about that. And I also think we need to explore new ideas. I've been talking for over a year about the idea of doing public-private partnerships in parks that can create income for our parks and activity. And this hasn't happened yet. So I'm looking for at least some kind of permission or some kind of infrastructure there so that we can create those kind of partnerships again to create more activity and more use of our parks, rather than kind of just trying to turn the clock back. That's all I have, Chair. Thanks.
Councilmember Scruder-Brayton.
Thanks. I want to go back to turf reduction and irrigation systems. $18,490,000 was the ask for turf and irrigation renovation. What did you say was the plan for those parks that have grass? Was it to keep the grass and improve the irrigation system, or was it to eventually replace the majority of the grass with an alternative turf solution?
So some of the parks, we will be, turf replacement will take place in the removal of turf. Some of the parks that will not occur, and so the evaluation will be based on what's the usage of the park, what's the usage of water, where will we have the most benefit with the turf replacement. Our goal is certainly not to impact the use of the park and the pleasurability by taking out turf where it's a playable surface. So there will be an evaluation. And so we will be doing some irrigation replacement, such as at Chavez and Dr. Martin Luther King as a result of the Prop 68 grants. But there will be turf replacement at up to at least 14 parks in this current round of funding proposals.
Okay, and when is it likely that we'll do this analysis of the park?
Well, it's ongoing.
Oh, it's ongoing.
And we can get you more information about the criteria that my staff is using when they identify areas where they are recommending the removal of the grass and replacement with some sort of substance, whether it be bark or mulch.
How much do we pay for water to irrigate our lawns at our 76 parks a
So
year?
we water twice a week, at $1.2 million.
$1.2 million to water twice a week at our parks.
At all of our parks, and that is not adequate to maintain not just the grass, but the trees are really what have been suffering as a result of that twice a week watering program. So in this year's budget, we did propose an increase, and I believe that's Measure H as well, to increase the watering 3 times a week and increase the budget by $500,000.
Thank you. No more questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember? I want to make a note here on public comment. Ask any of the public that has any comments to write them down. Right before we break for lunch, I'll ask for any public comment on any presentation that we have had today, and then I'll do the same thing this afternoon at the end of this afternoon's session. Also, I want to make a note for the record. I did receive one public comment on email, and I have forwarded that on to staff for them to look at. So thank you. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Next up, Bill, Public Works.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Bill Sandhu, Public Works Director. We're going to go over Public Works related deferred maintenance, and here's the total. Deferred maintenance, $114.7 million. We will go over some of the individual deferred maintenance. Airport, $242,000, which is, there is a project, ongoing project to address both of these issues, painting of hangars and crack sealing. So ongoing project is addressing this deferred maintenance. Traffic engineering. So here's some inventory of our traffic engineering infrastructure. Over 12,000 streetlights citywide, 160 traffic signals, and over 29,000 traffic signs, and over 1,300 miles of lane lines. That is kind of highlights of inventory. And we also keep upgrading our pedestrian crossing infrastructure. So now we have 90 flashing beacons, that's overhead, and there is a project putting additional 10 flashing beacons for pedestrian crossing. So street light deferred repairs, some of the major areas of concern is we still have 1,000 painted street light poles. These are back from 60s and 70s, and we do see failure of these poles here and there during our rainy season, during windy season. That's about $3,500 a pole, $3.5 million. So next one of the concerned area is, again, the good news in this area is being addressed. This is high voltage street light circuits. We started with 735 high voltage lights. We converted over 500 so far, and the council authorized $1 million a year. We've been doing this for the last 3 years, I believe. 180 lights remaining. My hope is by end of next year we will have all of those replaced. That's kind of good news, and that was a really high voltage. When I say that, I mean somewhere around 2,400, 2,500 volts. So good news is we're getting very close to finish line on this project. Again, this high voltage, we started this project in 2019, 552 lights converted, 180 remaining. My goal is this year and next year get this completed. Signals, we talked a little bit yesterday. The biggest thing we wanted to do here is in the city, the signals communicate with each other, and we have most up-to-date modern detection system which we've been putting in. And so just one of the biggest item in this signal area is traffic signal poles non-standard. So state changes their standards time to time, and we still have some old signal poles that need to be basically upgraded. That's about $5.4 million. This is one of the projects we do as we go. We get some state and federal grants. Different maintenance there is about $6.8 million. And signage and striping. Here's 1,350 lane miles. Our goal is ongoing basis to keep upgrading our traffic signs to current standards and striping to current standards. If you notice, our current standard is 6-inch striping rather than 4-inch that used to be in the past. It's more safety and also to accommodate autonomous vehicles or self-driving vehicles also. So that's a new standard. So even upgrading that, we made significant improvements in this area, progress in this area, but a long ways to go. So this is another project. The pedestrian crossings, when one of our biggest, the safety is when biggest priority for all modes of transportation, pedestrian, bicyclists, and vehicles. So one of the projects we took over a few years ago is upgrading to more modern, highly visible above ground flashing beacon. So this is there's a project that we have 10 more that we wanted to convert. Those are in-road lighting. Those are very ineffective. That's kind of old technology. We still have some of them that we like to convert in. Okay, so this is the total for traffic engineering, $18.9 million for all the projects that we went through. Street operations, here's inventory of our street. As you can see, we are a big city, 1,378 miles of curb gutter and over 1,366 lane miles of pavement, and sidewalk, over 1,400 miles of sidewalk. Some of the major funding sources are So one thing here you will notice, the cost to bring streets to good condition, $583 million. I divide this into two categories. One is the pavement, basically the pavement blacktop that we drive on. The other one is accessories. That's your sidewalk, curb gutter, sidewalk, traffic signals, lights, and striping. Those are accessories. So what we're going through is accessories. That's the total for payment to bring the PCI, which is Payment Condition Index, to mid-70s. That's our goal. We're in mid-60s. That's a good progress from 5 years ago. That's when we were in mid-50s for our PCI Payment Condition Index. The goal is in 70s. So 70s will be pretty good, in a good condition. So we're making a lot of progress in this area as far as the payment goes. That's how we measure the health of payments, how the payment looks like. Deferred maintenance in the street repairs is this doesn't include bringing PCI to 72. This is just basically, you see, where vehicles stop and accelerate, that's where you see a lot of damage on our streets. Wheel rods, wheel dig outs and repair them. That is, we just started that project last year, so we're making some progress, but that's where we have one of the biggest deferred maintenance in our city. Curb gutter and sidewalk. So we have over 81,000 street trees, and trees do cause damage to a sidewalk that you can see in the pictures. So we currently have backlog of 5,900 sections of sidewalk that needs to be removed and replaced. over 5,000, 5,900. Those are pretty much documented and prioritized and ready to go. So we, at the current contract prices, to do about 500 remove and replace sections of sidewalk is about $1.8 million. So in order for us to clear entire backlog, over $18 million, somewhere $18 to $20 million to clear entire backlog of 5,900. You will see some of this request coming in Measure H, enhancement request. And on top of 5,900, we get somewhere between 200 to 400 new work orders every year. So those also get documented in the system. So some of, you can see in 2014, the things were really, the offsets were becoming really serious issue, and they were liability and tripping hazard. Council authorized some of the asphalt patching, and that's what we've been doing since 2014. Our goal moving forward is to stop this practice or change this practice to more replacing with the concrete. But you will see that request coming to you as part of Measure H. Here, just pretty much, we talked about 5,900 current backlog and 300 to 400 work orders annually for new sidewalk replacement that we see every year, and they get documented. So total deferred maintenance repairs is this is to bring increased PCI for streets. PCI is again pavement condition index, which is a measure of how the pavement looks like. For example, completely dirt street will be 0 and 100 will be newly built good street. Parking surfaces, the parking does have some deferred maintenance, or a lot of deferred maintenance actually in this case. You can see some of the major things, some of the actually the things involved in just kind of summarize. Elevators, when one of the bigger issues for all garages. ADA access is when some of the challenges, the parking lots need to be paved and or slurried. Expansion joints on our parking garages, the painting on parking garages. So some of those, the structural deficit is also there. And also some of the challenges we see in our elevators is vandalism, not only in the elevators, also on the gate, on that the pedestrian overcrossing that connects to hotel on 9th Street. We see a lot of vandalism. So I think there are areas that we can put some vandal-proof lighting and some of other infrastructure. Also, these elevators need to be upgraded. Also, park system, upgrade and install park system. Park system is basically parking access revenue control system. That's the gates when you go in and get out and how you pay it. That's pretty much that's old system, very old technology that needs to be upgraded. And there is yesterday we mentioned there is a study that's underway, and we'll bring additional recommendations to you. And other couple of important things, fire suppression system also need to be upgraded at some point. Lighting fixtures, we made a lot of progress for upgrading some of our garage lights to LED, but there's still a lot more to go. You see painting and ADA upgrades. ADA upgrades are at about $729,000. The garage painting is about $490,000, $500,000. The deferred maintenance, so total deferred maintenance in our parking system is over $10 million. Okay, and next one, we can move into buildings. Public Works maintains all our city buildings. That's about over 98 buildings. in parks, fire, all other utilities and public works, all the buildings that Public Works is responsible for maintaining. There's inventory there. There is inventory there. So about 17 Public Works building, 37 utilities, PRN, fire stations. That's about 98 buildings that we maintain. So one thing we have not done citywide, assessed our buildings, a deep assessment or facilities condition analysis. So this, you will see this request coming as part of Measure H, because otherwise, if we allocate $1 million here, $500,000 here, that doesn't get us where we want to. We want to present you 5 to 10 years roadmap on all of our facilities. Okay, here's how it's prioritized. So that's what the facility condition analysis is supposed to be doing after it's approved. We will bring it back that here's what we need to do our facilities, all of our buildings in next 5 to 10 years. So that's what the facilities condition analysis is. It will be coming to you as an enhancement for Measure H. So Corporation Yard, as you can see, it was built in 60s. Some of the buildings were built in 60s and 70s and haven't been upgraded since then. One of the biggest thing is a lot of buildings there at the Corporation need to be re-roofed, roof needs to be replaced, and some of other accessories, including gutters, need to be upgraded or replaced. Restrooms and the securities, when also a lot of times when we have the fence we have has been cut several times, and we need to get the fence upgraded to enhance the security also. Security, lighting, and also, one of the projects we've been working on is getting some information about enhancing the security, and we done analysis because there's been a lot of vandalism at the courtyard. That happens on a regular basis. So this will be one of the projects. We'll bring it back to you in the future. Other transportation facilities, just some minor improvements. Transit center went through major improvements, and it's just pretty much getting updated. And it's still, you can see Amtrak station needs some upgrades, and courtyard, and also a transit center, that's AD upgrades. The transit center, my hope is with the project we have, all the upgrades will be finished. Building services, one of about the total deferred maintenance, $1.6 million plus. Once we have the facilities condition analysis done, we'll bring back complete list of deferred maintenance and priorities. Compost facilities, this is one of the facilities we have. That is to comply with state laws, and we take all of our green waste and organics and turn into compost. And some of the equipment needs, some of this is being addressed as part of implementation for SB 1383. So some of this, I would say, is being addressed because we're doing a study there to also bring it back to the council, the priorities for the compost facility upgrades. Site infrastructure needs, infrastructure also needs to be upgraded there to comply with the state law. But again, this is also, we'll bring details back to you after that phasing plan is completed, which should be coming in next 4 to 6 months. Total repairs at compost facilities, and also landfills, so they never go away. So we have a couple of landfills. They were operated in 50s and 60s. Gear Road and Carpenter, pretty much the new regulations come up, and the more And there are newer requirements, and we keep working on those. One of the goal is for us to at least get Carpenter landfill completed, and there'll be ongoing monitoring. So landfills, you can see the deferred maintenance. There's some more work need to be done for Carpenter before we go into ongoing repairs. It's about $800,000. And summary, here's total upgrades, and you can see some of the areas are smaller. Our bigger concerns are sidewalk. Also, the forest is not included here. In traffic, there is some deferred maintenance, but we've been very successful in grants addressing some of that. Parking is concern, also a big concern. That concludes Public Works. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council members?
No, sir.
Yes.
I do. Thank you for that presentation. Again, numbers are astronomical, no surprise. But just the Parks and Rec and the Public Works presentation has really emphasized to me the need for all these deferred maintenance items to be listed in priority and presented to us in priority, and an action plan of when we need to tackle them. There's some things in here that I see are public health and safety items, and of course I would imagine those would be the top of the priority list. But so I really hope we can do that. If not for, well, we do need to do that for these items, period. I wish we had them for this presentation, but I hope at some time soon we could see them in a list of priorities, and then a plan on how to achieve the top priorities. The ones that really stand out to me from your presentation are the ADA improvement facility needs, particularly with the Amtrak station for $68,000 and the transportation center for $50,000. I cannot see any reason why we can't get those done. And in fact, I'm really concerned that they're listed at all. So I hope we could really dedicate some focus in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chris Rickey.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to also just back up Rosa here on Councilmember Escudero-Brayton here on the importance of prioritizing and communicating with us what your priorities are. The numbers are overwhelming, and we can't afford to fix that many things in a very quick manner, right? So it's going to be critical to, for us as a community and as a council and as a government to wrestle with the best ways to improve the places that need it most, like what Councilmember Escudero-Brayton was talking about in terms of ADA at the transit centers and stuff, right? So I'm hopeful that we can do that. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Just real briefly, so this presentation is just mainly highlighting where the needs are. One of the things that we are doing, particularly in Bill's area, is the facility condition index. That study in and of itself will help us identify and prioritize those various areas. With respect to parks, we do have that identified. You're going to see us, when we do the Measure H presentation, those priorities are really going to come to light when you see them there. So this is a process that we've undertaken. We will have a more comprehensive analysis later in the future. We didn't have time between the passage of Measure H to today to actually have, we have it bifurcated, but we're going to put it all together at a certain point. But for Bill's area in particular, having that facility condition index is what's going to be the first important step in us addressing particularly the building needs. There are some of these things in here that you identify that are critical issues. You're going to see them in the Measure H presentation.
Councilmember Williams?
No, sir.
And my only comment is we've just gone through Parks and Public Works. That's $220 million of deferred maintenance that just between those two areas. So yeah, we do have our work cut out for us, and we'll move on. Thank you, Bill. Next is utilities. Will Wong.
Morning, Chair Wright, Finance Committee. I'm Will Wong, Director of Utilities. So I will also reemphasize that the City of Modesto has not been resting on this, and we are actively looking at facility condition assessments. I want to shout out to Patrick Crowley for Building Services, because we did partner with Patrick and do a facility condition assessment for the utilities facilities. So with that, our 5-year program, deferred maintenance, is about $4.6 million. I want to emphasize that this is just for the utilities buildings. Regarding the infrastructure, the pipes, the pumps, the wells, the tanks, the pump stations, those are already covered in our utilities master plans, our water and wastewater master plans. So those are already included in the rates, and those are the basis of our rate study. This facility condition assessment is similar to a master plan, which will then outline the priorities of these projects. And I'm proud to say that there's a great partnership between Public Works, Building Services, and Utilities, and my managers, to ensure that we have good numbers. And this is a 5-year outlay plan, only $4.6 million. Of course, as we continue on, there will be additional expenses. So where we see the bulk of the improvements that we're going to need to do is at our primary wastewater treatment facility at the Sutter plant. We have about $4.3 million, $4.4 million worth of facility assessments, condition assessment needs that we need to address in the next 5 years. The Sutter admin building is a 72-year-old building. The Sutter maintenance shop is a 37-year-old building, and the Sutter collections building is 22. And these improvements include fixing the roofs, HVAC, flooring, electrical, security, fire. Those are the items that were identified that we need to address in the next 5 years at $4.4 million. At our Jennings facility is relatively new. It's about 7 years old. These costs are about $160,000. And again, these are just routine maintenance that we'll have to go out, hire a contractor to look at our roofing infrastructure and make sure that our HVAC is up to speed, and we continue with the ongoing maintenance needs at the Jennings facility. And then at the Water Division Courtyard, it's our newest facilities out on Lit Road. It is 3 years old, so you can see that we have zero deferred maintenance. It's a brand new building. However, in years 6 through 10, there are some minor things that we'll need to budget for in order for us to ensure that we keep up with the routine maintenance needs. So with that, the deferred maintenance for the utilities buildings only is about $4.6 million over the next 5 years. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Will. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none here. Councilmember Ricky, you have any questions?
No questions,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Will. Next, we'll move on to pension presentation. And do we have our handouts for that yet? Good morning, Christina.
Good morning. Christina Alger, Director of Human Resources, and I'm here to cover CalPERS unfunded accrued liability and pension. All right, so CalPERS pension funding, I'm going to go over a little bit about how CalPERS funding works, just to give you a basic overview of what that looks like. So here at the City of Modesto, we have 3 pension tiers. PEPRA came into effect in 2013, and so prior to that, we had a classic version. So people that were hired before 2012 or up to 2012, they're classic members, and so their formulas are richer than the PEPRA members. In 2013, the PEPRA Act came out. That was what PERS tried to do to address the pension obligations and the liabilities that were coming in. And so this new tier, anybody who was hired from 2013 forward falls within this new tier. And so the tier is a little bit less generous, and so it's a little bit less expensive now and in the long term. So a little bit about how CalPERS how they fund the benefits. And so this just gives you an idea of where the funds come from. And so as you're probably already aware, we have an employer contribution and an employee contribution. And so this just gives you an idea of, out of every dollar, what percentage of that comes from those contributions. And so for the employers, we contribute about 32% or 32 cents, 32% of a dollar, towards those pension obligations. The employee or the member's obligation is about 13 cents for every dollar. But you can see that that 55% or 55 cents of every dollar actually comes from investment earnings. And that's the reason why we have an unfunded liability, is because the way the pension obligations are structured, we rely a lot on earnings. And when CalPERS doesn't meet their earnings estimates, that creates an unfunded liability. So this slide just gives you a little bit of history of the returns on the market over the last several years. And so the red line that you see there in the middle, that's what we call CalPERS assumption rate. And so when they create the contributions that the employees and the employers are going to contribute, what they do is they have an assumption rate of what they think they're going to get from the market. And when they look at that, it's more of a long term. So, obviously there's volatility from year to year, but over the long term, they hope to at least get that particular assumption rate. As you can see, there's been some years where there's been some negative activity going on. And the numbers that I'm bringing to you today actually recognize that 21.3% in 2021. It does not recognize yet that minus 6.1 for 2022, and I'll show you a little bit about how that's going to shift our numbers. But you can see that over time we've had lots of ups and downs in the market. This is really what's created that unfunded accrued liability. So the state of the City of Modesto. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about where we sit as a city. I want to start a little bit with the workforce. And so I mentioned that PEPRA became effective in 2013. And so the idea is that over time, and as attrition happens, as employees retire and new employees come in, we shift from that classic, more expensive version to the PEPRA members, which are a little bit more, a little bit easier to handle on the finances, right? So you can see the history here. This is actually City of Modesto. I started with the 2011 and where we started, and you can see over the years how we've shifted from classic to PEPRA. And so currently for 2022, we have a good amount of employees now that are PEPRA. As we go through the years, this number will continue to increase. Our unfunded liability will also recognize that lower cost PEPRA member will benefit us, and we will be working on getting our UAL down. So this is the current city's unfunded liability. These are our totals. And so this is always 2 years in arrears. I usually don't get the last year until about August or September. So when I come to finance budget workshops, the last one that I have is from last September. But these are the numbers. And so that's why I said that it recognizes that 2021 increase in the market, but it doesn't yet recognize that 2022 decrease in the market. So as you can see here, I do have a little bit of history to kind of show you how that market change affected us. We're about 98% of our UAL for safety is general fund. About 31% of miscellaneous is general fund. And so you can see here it's about $304 million that we have in unfunded accrued liability currently. I also have 2019 and 2020 for both of these buckets, and so we do have two different contracts, one for miscellaneous and one for safety. So there are two different contracts with two different balances. So in the safety version, you can see 2019, actually I think I have that backwards. 2019 was actually $226,000 for safety, and then 2020, $242,000. And so you can see we went down to $195,000. That's because of that great market return we had in 2021. And then you can also see how that affected the miscellaneous. So 2019 was $137 million. 2020 we went up to $149. And then this year we're at 107, and that's because of that great market return. So this chart is meant to show you kind of what that's going to look like going forward. And so this shows our 2020 results, our 2021 results, and then the 2022 projected results. And so you can see in 2020 how our unfunded accrued liability, where it kind of sat. And then you can see the 2021 results and how it drastically reduced our unfunded liability and the payments that we would have to make over the years. However, we did have a negative return in 2022, and so that yellow line shows you how it's going to go back up. This just gives a projection over the years of our annual payments. And so when we make payments to PERS, we have our normal cost that we pay, and then we also have a UAL payment. So it's a separate payment. It is lumped in. We can make payments on a monthly basis, or we can make them on an annual basis. If we make them annually, we save some money doing it that way. So we do make the annual payments. But you can see over the years, general fund versus non-general fund, and this is our full payment for both normal cost and UAL, how that's going to increase over the next several years. So with PERS and the unfunded liability, there's a peak that happens. And so we're expecting that peak to happen right around 2031 at this moment. This gives you a little bit of history on the percentage of funds. So the full obligation versus the unfunded portion. So in the miscellaneous, you can see over the years that we've kind of hovered between high 70s and even a low 70 there, up to 80% with that great market return we had in 2021. So of our entire obligation, we're 80% funded, which means 20% of that is our UAL. And then the bottom chart shows you what safety looks like. And so safety is a much richer plan, and so we are not as funded as we are with the miscellaneous. This gives you an idea, and this is for the miscellaneous plan, of a percent of payroll. And so just to give you an idea of by payroll dollars, what percent of payroll are we paying towards that unfunded liability and the full PERS cost. So for miscellaneous, for every dollar that we spend, and we are in 2022-23 now, it's a 29.4% total cost. And so at 29 cents of every dollar that we pay in payroll, we pay that 29 cents to PERS in additional payment. So the bottom line shows you UAL only, and then the top line shows you total that includes that normal cost. So you can see as we grow for miscellaneous, we're looking at about a 33% of total payroll for them. This slide gives you what safety looks like. And so as you can see, safety is a lot more percent of payroll over the years, and it's because it's a much richer plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing from the city in terms of trying to tackle that unfunded accrued liability. And what are the things we're doing to try to mitigate the costs and bring those costs down over time. So the first thing I'm going to talk about are additional discretionary payments, or ADPs for short. So we do have current agreements with a couple of our labor unions, and they do actually assist us in making additional discretionary payments towards that unfunded accrued liability portion. We want to do that because what it does is just like making extra payments on your house, you end up saving money on your interest in the long term. And so it doesn't necessarily save us anything currently, but over the long term, it will save us a lot. And I'll show you what that looks like. So currently we have MPOA. They do 1.5% of payroll that they give back towards those payments. Currently what the per pay period amount is and the total to date. So they started these payments back in 2019 and have been paying for the last couple of years. We have MCFFA. They actually had a tiered system, so they started at 1% back in 2018. But over the last contract that they had escalators in there. So currently what they're paying is a 6.5% of payroll. You can see the current per pay period and the total that they've given per day to date towards these UAL payments. And then we have unrepresented, mostly safety. Actually, this is all safety right now. So the unrepresented safety follows what the unions have agreed to. And so for MPOA and MCFFA specifically, their unrepresented follow the 1.5 or the 6.5. And you can see what they've given to date. And then finally, we have our miscellaneous unions. And so we don't have a payroll deduction for them, but what we have been doing the last few years is a leave bank purchase option. And so what they can do is they can elect to purchase an extra bank of leave. The money that they give to pay for that bank, we don't keep it. We send it off for UAL items. And so MCMA, we do a 50-50. 50% of it's going to a trust, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And then 50% is going towards those ADPs. The other two unions, it's all going towards ADP. And so you can see total to date since we've started working with the unions, they've given about $3.4 million in additional discretionary payments to help get our unfunded liability down. So this slide just gives you, this is a little bit of hypothetical. So just to give you an idea of if we were to continue to make payments for the next 10 years, what impact does that have on our UAL? And so I do have this separated between the miscellaneous and the safety because they are two different contracts. And if we continue to do what we're doing with miscellaneous and we continue to do that over the next 10 years, it's going to be about $1.4 million in savings over the life of the contract. Now these contracts, some of these UALs are 20-year and some are 30-year in terms of how they're amortized. But this would be the projection. If we continued our current path with them over the next 10 years, we would save about that much money over the long term. The safety is the bottom one, and so if we continue down the path of what we're doing now with those unions, we're going to be saving about $14 million over the life of that contract. And this is interest savings. So this just gives you an idea of what that does to our annual payments. And so this is not similar to a mortgage, right? Usually your mortgage is a set for the entire life of the contract. You have the same monthly payment, and if you make those additional payments, you save on interest, but you still make the same monthly payments until you get it paid off, and you just pay it off earlier. However, the way CalPERS manages the pension obligation is they recalculate our payments every year based off of the last year's market rates and what we realized or didn't realize in the market, what that adds to the unfunded liability, if there are additional discretionary payments. And so they actually rebalance those payments, those annual payments. So we would save interest over the long term, but it also actually lowers our payment just a little bit every year. So it makes it a little bit easier for us to make those payments now. So you can see in this chart, our original is the black line, the new required payment is the green line, and this is the safety, and that's based off of that projection of 10 years that I mentioned in the last slide. So the other item that we're doing besides the ADPs is we're doing a Section 115 trust. And this is a good practice for agencies to do. ADPs, obviously, they have the interest that they save. They're pretty clearly a good option. But there's also another piece of this that we want to focus on, and it has to do with that peak. And this is why we want to do the trust. So this is what a payment plan looks like. This is actually safety over the next several years until it goes away. And you can see how the payments, the annual required payments, they climb up to a peak and then they go back down on the other end. And so the idea behind having a trust is to put some money away, earn interest on that trust, and have that money set aside so that when we hit those peak years, we can withdraw that money to help us make those really big payments. And so that's why this particular option is also good to have in place. Just to give you an idea about what that looks like if we were to, and we did start a trust, and so I'm going to talk about what we've done so far. But this just gives you an idea of how much interest we would possibly earn and how much money we would have say in 2029 when we're getting ready to start those big payments. So this is really just a 2.4 initial deposit and how that would grow over the years. This one gives a 2.4 initial deposit and then a 500,000 annual additional payment over those years to kind of show you how that would grow and where we would be at, how much money we could possibly have once we started hitting that peak. So we did establish a trust last year. We came to council in January, and we actually established 2 trusts. I spoke about the OPEB trust yesterday. So this is the pension trust, and so we did do some seed money out of this trust, and it was carryover money that we were able to use, and some of our employee benefit reserve also we used here. So you can see that our initial deposit was about $2.3 million. We did that payment just right before the fiscal year ended, so in June. To date, our current balance is about $2.5 million. The market hasn't been that strong, so we haven't earned a lot yet, but we're just getting started on this. And so the hope is that we continue to earn that interest, we get some good market returns, and we continue to focus on putting some seed money in there so that we can shave down that peak at the end. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Christina. Any questions from council members? No questions? Yes.
Thank you,
Bray.
Chair. Hi, Christina. Slide 12. That slide, I understand, indicated the additional amount we are paying PERS.
Correct.
Why is that amount going up steadily, both for miscellaneous and safety groups, if I thought our number of PEPRAs that provided a more, that was less generous?
Yeah.
Those numbers are increasing. So I would think it would be the opposite effect. Why don't we see that reflected in these numbers?
Absolutely. So if you remember the peak that we're having, right? So we still have that growing payment that we're going to be making because we still have to pay off that unfunded accrued liability. And so the way PERS has the structure for that, those payments slowly climb till we get a peak and then they come back down. And so this actually reflects those payments that we're going to be making. It will come back down on the other side.
Oh.
We just have to get there, right? So it's just that getting to that peak and then on the other side it will start to come down. Part of that is because of the PEPRA, and it takes a little bit of time to pay off that unfunded accrued liability for the classic members because that's a good amount of money. But as we go through time, we're going to start to come back down on the other side.
And a lot of it has to do with CalPERS's ability to meet their market rate of returns.
Right.
Every time that they don't make it, that only adds to the unfunded liability. So they have to meet 6.8% every year. If they don't meet that 6.8, that adds to an unfunded accrued liability, which is making that line grow. So it's really incumbent upon them. As she stated, most of their money that they generate is from market returns. So if they're not meeting those returns, that just increases our liability.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chris Rickey.
Thanks, Chair. Overall, it sounds like we've got a really good plan going here, and it looks like we've got a good financial control over what's happening here in a good direction. I think that's awesome. I think the thing in terms of pensions that we have to think about in the long term is, our ability to get over the hill finally to where these are totally manageable and we're not having to use general fund money to basically buffer the payments that we're already making from within, right, that we have budgeted. And so I guess the holy grail that I'm looking for, Christina, is like, how do we get there? And I'm not sure we found that pathway yet. So I'm hopeful that we can try to find that.
Thank you. Councilmember? No, sir. Okay. Okay, thank you, Christina.
Thank
We're
you.
going to take about a 5-minute break right now and then come back for sponsorship presentation. Thank you.
Do we have those?
So next is going to be the sponsorship presentation. Lori?
Good morning again, Chair Wright, members of the Finance Committee. Lori Smith, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhoods, and this presentation is just an update on our city sponsorships for community and special events. And it is around Administrative Directive 3.6. So Administrative Directive 3.6 establishes the policy and process for city sponsorships of events, activities that provide a community or economic benefit to the city. This administrative directive was adopted in January of 2022. The city provides in-kind or direct monetary contributions to events or activities. In return, the city receives name recognition, inclusion, and acknowledgement on any postings or publications. And it also includes a listing of approved events. This administrative directive includes a listing of approved events and process for new requests of sponsorship. The criteria to be a qualifying event is that it must be a cultural, social, economic, or recreational benefit to the community. It cannot be a religious, political, or seek to support any religious or political viewpoint. And the event is to be held at a city-owned facility, property, or on a city street. So there's two ways the city supports activities. One is in kind, and that can be in the form of waiving rental fees, waiving public safety permit fees, the use of city staffing, the use of city-owned equipment, or the waiving of associate fees for that equipment. We also can provide financial assistance or contribution paid directly to the organization. So the administrative directive contains a list of events that were approved at the time this administrative directive went into effect, and this is a list of them. And they include events that we have supported for many, many years, things such as the 4th of July Parade, Graffiti Walk of Fame, the Gala at Griseda, Boys and Girls Club Haunted Museum, etc. You can see the list here. The ones with the dollar signs receive financial support, and the others are primarily in kind. There are a couple that we'll be following up in the coming year just to make sure those activities are continuing to be active. COVID, a couple of these went dormant, so we'll just be following up and confirming that this list is still accurate. And this is what it looks like, if I could see it. This is what the financial contributions are. I can't see that far. So you can see the amount each department contributes in each of these events, and then the total amount of in-kind support is approximately $230,000. And these are those that receive financial support. And they include the King Kennedy Memorial Center Board of Directors. We provide them with a financial contribution for their activities in the year. This year, it will be increasing to $5,000. The agreement included an increase for one time only, and that is being increased this year. Some of the others that receive financial support are the Stanislaus Partners in Education, as well as Love to Modesto and Domo. Total amount of those financial contributions is $17,400. So if you're a new event and you want to receive city sponsorship, there's a process that you have to go through. You submit an application. We review the application and make sure that it's complete. If it's an in-kind contribution, it can be approved by a department head. Any financial contributions that are less than $500 can also be approved by a department head. Anything over $500 must be approved by the city council. And in the event that your application requires council approval, we need to receive it 120 days prior to the event so we can make sure it gets through the process on time. So in the course of the last year, we've had several organizations approach us for sponsorship, and we've included them in this slide as to be approved as part of this process. That is Silver Squares, These are the in-kind: Silver Square, Stanislaus Asian American Community Resource, and the Hot Wheels Foundation. Then for cash support, you can see the list: Dia de los Muertos, the NAACP, Hot Wheels Foundation, West Modesto Collaborative, Domo, and then the Miracle League. The total amount of the in-kind contribution request is $7,380. Total amount of financial support is $18,500 for a total of $25,880. This is a summary of those that are already included in the administrative directive, those new requests for a total of $273,303. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does any committee members have any questions?
No, thank you.
No. Councilmember Ricky, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think my biggest concern here is just it feels like our support of events is anemic. And if you look at the event industry as a whole in the city, it's basically crashed. We used to have an entertainment commission meeting every, 2 weeks, and now we haven't I don't know if we've even had one this year. But what I'll say is that festivals, events, concerts, they're critical to the development of any city, and culture is critical to our city. And so I'm looking forward to our city being a partner in the development of events and culture, and that we make funding more of a priority. I mean, $25K investment in events is astoundingly low for a city of 225,000 people. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have a comment. Basically on the same note, I'm concerned about some of our events that make our city unique, one of them being the graffiti parade and the 4th of July parade. Those are big events for our city. And my concern is that I think those two are really put on by nonprofits in our city. I know that my concern is it might come a day when that nonprofit don't have the manpower to put on a particular graffiti parade for that week. And I would like to see us somehow have a department that looks at these different events and help organize them with those nonprofits or other nonprofits that might want to be involved in these type of events. The graffiti week is important for the city of Modesto because of Lucas, American Graffiti, Star Wars. Those are what we are known for here in Modesto, and I think it's time for us to really look at how are we going to make sure that those events continue on positive and get other people involved in these events. I know that the Qantas do a great job, but a lot of them are up there in years, and I'm up there with them. So I'm really concerned about, is there going to be one year where they say we can't do the graffiti parade no more, and then what are we going to do? So that's something I think we need to really look at and decide, how we as a city can add and help making sure that those events continue on. So that's my comment. I'm sure Councilmember Williams has probably nothing.
Great presentation, Lori. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can acknowledge Councilmember Alvarez has arrived.
Yeah, apologies for my tardiness. I was at another community meeting this morning.
I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Next up is the American Rescue Plan Action Update.
Good morning, Deanna Christensen, Director of Finance. I'm here to provide an update in regards to our American Rescue Plan, as well as a recommendation in regards to reallocating some of the original programs that were included as part of the ARPA funding. So just to provide an overview of the actual ARPA spending plan. So there were actually two specific spending plan actions that were authorized in regards to the 45.9 million of ARPA funds that were received. One of the actions was related to the first allocation that we received on and approved on May 25th of 2021. And then the second allocation of funding that was received was approved as part of a council action on July 12th of 2022. The themes that were specified under the programs that were approved under these actions involved the themes of the economic vitality, quality of life, and the governance and service delivery. And then just a reminder in regards to the timeline of spending of these funds, we are required under the Treasury guidelines to ensure that these programs are obligated by December 31st, 2024, and then they have to be fully expended by December 31st of 2026. So this captures an outline, and again, I try to just break it up into two allocations that were approved under those two actions. So for year one, ARPA allocations, I've captured the description of each program, what was approved as part of the allocation, as well as providing an update of the expenses that have actually been incurred through the last quarter of reporting, which it would be as of March 31st of 2023. So I do want to kind of just acknowledge some of the areas where there is no expending activity at this point and just kind of give a general update on those areas. So for the first, second, and third line related to the revolving loan fund, both for the downtown development as well as the water sewer connection fees. So that actually just came before council, the actual proposal of the loan process and policy that came before CED. So that was recently approved on April 11th of this year. So staff will begin moving forward in regards to promoting as well as getting the implementation in place. So you should see expenses coming up pretty soon. The other area is related to the implementation support of the workforce development program of the $500,000. Again, we are working in coordination with some of our partners in regards to identifying the use of those funds. So again, still in research, but we do anticipate a recommendation coming in the near future. The other area is related to expanding the Wi-Fi downtown and availability as well in our city community facilities. So again, working out a plan to identify what community facilities we want to structure that Wi-Fi, and again, we anticipate to bring an item moving forward. The other area is in regards to the safe parking initiative that did come before council, was approved. So we're just, again, underway in regards to the partners that we're working forward, moving forward with, and we should have some actual expenses that will be incurred, as well as, again, the implementation of moving forward with that program. The other area is related to the mental health clinician program that is underway. The only thing, again, because it's not staffing within City of Modesto, again, it's just a matter of us getting billed for through BHRS in regards to the services that are in coordination with this program. So again, I want to emphasize the program is underway with the police department. It's just we haven't incurred expenses in regards to the reimbursement of those agreements. The downtown beautification, again, we are working with some of our downtown partners in regards to identifying specific projects that can be utilized to be able to expend those funds. And CED is coordinating with those partners to have a plan that will be brought forward. And then still staying within the year one programs, the Fire Station 1 deferred maintenance. Again, and obviously we know it's going to be more than $2 million to address the deferred maintenance needs for Fire Station 1. So it's just ensuring we have funding available once we determine how we address the improvements that will be done that will be needed to move forward with the deferred maintenance improvements. The next area is the Discover replacement. That was also an action in regards to, we had to go through a bidding process. There was a recommendation that just came before council in regards to the company that will be implementing the new replacement. So that was just approved on April 4th. So staff will be moving forward with getting that implemented. The next area is the cybersecurity. That also was a recent action that was improved in regards to some of the security tools that will be implemented, that will be funded from that specific amount of money of the $490,000. The 10th Street battery backup system. This is something that we are coordinating with the county, and this will actually be an item that we're going to recommend to reallocate. It's been determined that we only need $50,000 of the $250,000, so we're recommending to apply the $200,000 to new programs that I will be recommending. The other one is the online service application. I do want to call this out because we determined that we only needed $23,000 of the $60,000, so we will be recommending to reallocate the remaining difference. And then the employee recognition and the innovation lab, those are two internal programs that we will also be recommending to reallocate because, again, these are programs that we intend to capture as part of the employee benefits fund, and again, allocate funding on a future basis as well as being proposed in the current year to capture those specific programs as part of our internal budget. And then going on to year 2, ARPA allocation. The first one in regards to the Affordable Housing Trust. We are looking at partnering with Salvation Army in regards to exploring how those funds will be used. The reserve funding of the $4.5 million, again, until we actually finish the fiscal year budget, that's when we will, again, determine what the overall need is for what needs to be utilized of that 4.5. But again, based on what's anticipating, we intend to use it all, but you won't see any expenses until we see the full actuals for the entire fiscal year. The reserve funding of the $1.6 million, and I do want to call out the $1.6 million for the hazard pay. Those two amounts amounted to the $8.1 million that hadn't been assigned. Again, we brought the item associated with the hazard pay. The actual amount that was incurred based on that payout to our active full-time employees was the $6.5 million. So we will be proposing to reallocate the $1.6 for other programs that I'll be recommending shortly. And then the mental health, blight abatement, park rangers, those all are going to be recommended to be removed from the second year allocation. And again, we'll be proposing a new reallocation because all of these programs will be captured in the Measure H spending plan that will be captured in the presentation shortly. And then the downtown quiet zone, this is an area, and I believe it was mentioned in Jessica's presentation on the grants. We are looking to utilize and leverage this money for potential other federal funding opportunity to address the overall needs for the downtown quiet zone. And then deferred maintenance we'll be recommending to remove to reallocate for other planning because the deferred maintenance will be captured as the long-term Measure H spending plan. And then parking improvements, again, is underway. And again, that should be incurring expenses shortly. So just to summarize in regards to the year 1, year 2 programs, so these are the specific line items that we're recommending to remove that were previously approved. Again, a lot of these are just items that are already being captured as part of the department's budget or being recommended as part of the Measure H spending plan. And again, the $1.6 million is amounts that we had to determine how it would be reallocated that we'll be proposing. And then the last two were amounts that we determined that we didn't need the full amount of the allocation, and these are the differences of what needs to be remained and reallocated to other use. So the total of that reallocation was about $4.6 million. So as part of what we're proposing as part of this presentation is how we are recommending to reallocate the ARPA funding projects of the $4.6 million. So for the first few line items, these are one-time funding contributions that we're recommending to provide to these agencies. The first one is the State Theater of the $75,000. This is just, again, ongoing contributions as a one-time contribution to address some film school activities that they're proposing in regards to some equipment needs that they need to move forward with the program. The other area is the Modesto Area Partners in Science. This would be a joint effort in regards to some program efforts with the Modesto City Schools as well as Modesto Junior College to help with some community science program events for our young community members. The other area is the Gallo Arts Center contribution of $25,000. This is a recommendation for a future festival that they're recommending for an community engagement that would involve family members of the community to, again, focus on some of the arts and musics specifically out in the Gallo. The next one is the Modesto Sister Cities of the $35,000. Again, this was a request of contributions made by this partner agency. They were not included in any of the prior allocations that we're recommending. The next one is the Central Valley Opportunity Center. This is a program that is currently in place and related to the workforce programming for farm workers in our Central Valley and just being able to provide support related to skills and ensuring higher wages. And they do have an actual office here located in Modesto. The next one is a third contribution related to the Convention Visitors Bureau of $250,000. And this just continues with the long-term business plan that they've provided in regards to expanding the tourism and attractions here in Modesto. The next area is related to Opportunity Stanislaus, a $200,000 contribution, and this is related to the Economic Development Assistance, and this would capture 2 fiscal years of funding for that specific program. The Cesar Chavez renovation project for the $1.2 million. So if you recall, there was an $8.5 million grant that was received from the state associated with this project. Unfortunately, with inflation and increase in cost, there is additional funding that's needed to fully meet the design requirements that are outlined in that project. That's estimated about $1.2 million. So we're recommending to capture ARPA funding to support that program in addition to the $8.5 million that's already been allocated from the state funding. The next one is the Expand Modesto Beautification of the $500,000. So we already have an item that focuses on the downtown beautification. So this additional allocation would focus more on the beautification outside of downtown. The next area is related to the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District. They did receive, for this specific area, a $200,000 allocation, and we're recommending to add additional funding of the $218,000. And this, again, continues to provide the efforts related to establishing and forming an enhanced infrastructure financing district and expanding on the services that have already been provided with the Cosmont consultant that's providing work, but there is additional cost that's needed to continue with that efforts to form that district. The next area is business incentives. Again, there is currently a business incentive established for businesses here in downtown, but this would focus on bringing more businesses and expanding those businesses here in downtown. So there's a variety of incentive programs that we can establish to entice these businesses to move their business here in downtown. So again, we're estimating that that cost will be about $500,000. And then the last area is investing more related to homeless services of the $1.5 million. The 3 areas, as what's stated there, is related to continue to providing funding for the Safe Park. We currently only have about 6 months worth of funding for this program, so the additional funding would continue to provide the additional funding to expand that effort. The other areas related to the day center. We currently only have about 15 months allocated, so again, this would be a one-time funding to continue with that effort until we have more of a long-term funding stream. And then the last one is related to the bridge housing, and this is again looking for interim housing related to homeless individuals in our community and being able to provide funding to establish infrastructure needs and operational needs for those interim housing. So I think with that said, those are all of the, again, recommended programs that we're recommending to reallocate for the $4.6 million. I have directors here from CED as well as Parks that I know have been involved in the effort of determining how these funds would be reallocated. So we're more than happy to answer any questions that you might have in regards to the proposal.
Thank you, Deanna. Any questions from the council members?
Not at this time. Thank you.
I can't see Chris. Councilmember Ricky, you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, Chair. Thank you, though.
Okay, I do have a couple questions. On the 4.5 that's been reallocated, is all of our year two funding, right?
It's a mixture of year one and year two programs that had been previously approved, but predominantly it's year two.
And this would be the allocation of all of our ARPA money. This would be, all of it would now be allocated of the 45 million that we received.
So we have some funding from year one that has been funded yet. Is there a timeline that those have to be funded by?
Well, we have to fully obligate the funds by December 31st of 2024, and they have to be fully paid and expended by December 31st of 2026.
Okay.
And if they aren't expended by that time frame, then the funds will have to be returned to Treasury.
Okay, and that's for year one, or is that for all?
All of ARPA funding.
Okay. Do we have any indication that any of those funds will not be expended by 2026?
At this time, we don't have any indication, but I do want to stress and emphasize, we meet with the departments on a quarterly basis, as well as the reporting that we're required to remit to Treasury. So we continue to work with the departments to monitor the status of where they're at. And if there ever appears to be any issue or concern, then we would have a backup plan to decipher how we move forward or come back to council with another recommendation.
Yeah, I'd like to see us come back to council with, maybe get some input from council if there's some funds that are not being allocated or not being able to be spent. Some input from council would be great.
Yeah, we'll certainly stay on top of the expenditures, and if we recognize or see any adjustments that are necessary, we'll definitely be bringing those to council for approval.
Good.
And then I have a question.
Yes, our Councilman Escudillo-Britton.
Thank you, Chair. Can you please elaborate more on the 200,000 proposed for the Convention and Visitors Bureau?
250,000.
Yeah, 250,000. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have, so far, the Visit Modesto, as they are now called, has received $500,000 from the ARPA funding for travel and tourism activities. And this round of funding will assist in them continuing those activities to include things like a culinary event, a local competition for chefs using local produce, an ag celebration, a weekend festival for stone fruit, music festival, an upgraded art walk, and those are just a few of the things that they've identified that they'd like to explore with this new funding source.
Oh, that's fantastic. Will this contribution, will they come back and share with us how they were able to utilize this funding?
Absolutely, and they're currently scheduled to come to council on May 9th to provide an update with their activity over the last year, including what they've used the previous allocation of ARPA funding for.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's exciting.
Thank you. If there's no more questions from committee members or council members, thank you for the presentation. Moving on to Measure H, presentation overview. We have time for this presentation. Joe, okay. Okay. I can't, so it's only 10:30. I thought it said 11:30, so we're doing good. Welcome, Steve.
This will be, and you might be explaining this, but this will be in the same format as non-Measure H items were presented before. How can we compare side by side? How should we?
You should view these two things independently. We're separating the two things out to make sure for tracking and auditing purposes. So these are all enhancements to various department budgets. So you should treat them as such, like as they are enhancing the services that you've already seen in the department presentations. And they're broken out by departments. Each department head will get up there. They'll explain what their recommendations are and how they plan to utilize the money, as well as the impact it's going to have directly related back to the measure.
Okay, so everything that's in this presentation has not been referenced before? and serves as an enhancement to that particular department.
Correct.
Utilizing Measure H money.
Except for some of the questions where you guys were jumping ahead of us. I'm just kidding.
Right.
I'm just
And
kidding.
so there was reference to Measure H.
Yeah.
But aside from those,
Yeah, there was no Measure H money in the presentations you've already seen, but you've seen that. We've touched on them, particularly like the deferred maintenance stuff. And now these are gonna be the enhancements to the departments that will utilize Measure H funding that specifically relate back to the measure itself.
And it could be additional funding for things that are already in the budget.
It's just additional resources.
So the way I would think of it is that deferred maintenance was the kind of gloomy picture of all these things. This would be the opposite of that. So this is the things that are positive things that we want to do now that we have some funding to do those good things. So you're going to get a positive picture in this presentation.
Yes. Let's go.
Okay. So quickly, I'll just go through this. You've seen this slide before, talking about Measure H. It was approved by the voters, so thank the voters for that, for approving this additional funding. It's a 1% general sales tax for city services. The Measure H sales tax, again, it started being collected on April 1st of this fiscal year. We're estimating the additional revenue at $41.8 million coming up in this fiscal year, 23-24. We had initial estimates for the first quarter of collection in April to June of this fiscal year, 2023, of about $10 million. Council adopted an initial spending plan on February 14th that obligated $4.48 million of that initial $10 million. So there's still about $5.52 million from that initial quarter of collection of the $10 million. This proposed spending plan is what we're going to talk about now for the fiscal year 2024 draft proposed budget. Just want to go over with the Measure H ordinance language. There was types of expenditures that were identified. So these are those areas: addressing homelessness, supporting neighborhood police patrols, gang, drug, and crime prevention. So really the police, public safety area of focus there in that bullet. Supporting fire protection, paramedic 911 emergency response. So really the fire support services there. Fixing and maintaining roads and sidewalks, keeping parks, recreation facilities, and public areas safe and clear of trash and litter. So kind of really focusing on our parks, facilities, and other infrastructure improvements.
I do just want to make a note here, though, too, that this is a general sales tax, which means that the monies can be spent on any service that we provide in the city. I want to make that very clear. However, we outlined very specific language in the ordinance of areas that we want to address. That's what we told the community we were going to address, and that's what we're speaking to that. But I just want to be very clear. This is a general tax. It's not a specific tax. We can use it however the council sees fit. However, we are aligning with these categories in particular.
Absolutely.
City manager stole my thunder. That was my next point. Okay, so going on, looking at the Measure H sales tax revenue forecast. Over the next 5 fiscal years, we're anticipating about $43.6 million on average. You can see in this chart the revenue forecasted in the blue there, and then the structural budget deficit that we have, averaging about $7.5 million annually. Again, recognizing that that number has the potential to change. We still have labor negotiations that are being done right now with the union groups. So we anticipate that that number will increase from the numbers shown there in red. So the spending plan overview. Looking at this for the Measure H initial spending plan, you can see the one-time and the ongoing expenditures making up the $4.47 million. Again, that was already approved by council back in February. This new Measure H spending plan, we're looking at one-time expenditures of $18.8 million, ongoing of about $8.4 million, for the total spending plan of $27.1. Again, the idea is to load the one-time expenditures in the beginning, have less ongoing expenditures, and then that'll kind of flip-flop as we go out through the further out years for Measure H spending. We want to kind of upfront those on one-time costs in the beginning, get those out of the way, improving the infrastructure, and then the ongoing costs for positions and things like that will start to increase as we go through the out years for Measure H spending plan. You'll notice that we're not spending the full amount in the beginning here, again, because we want to keep some of that money in the Measure H spending plan and reserves for the infrastructure that we are creating. So we want to keep that in reserves for being able to make the maintenance for those things as well. So we want to have that in reserves for that purpose. In the lower chart there, you can see that these are the categories, kind of what we were talking about, the different types of expenditures. We want to show that these are the different categories that those expenses are being put forward in the spending plan. So we have parks improvements as a major category here, $10 million. Public safety, really including public safety and the fire EMS, again, over $10 million going through there. Forestry, another large category. Sidewalks, blight, homelessness. So you can see the different categories that we're proposing spending the funds on.
Quick clarifying question. So your columns Measure H initial spending versus Measure H spending. One is one time, the second column is moving forward?
No, those I was just trying to show distinguishing between what was approved in that initial spending plan back in February versus the Measure H spending plan is what we're proposing right now in the proposed budget. So if you see in that Measure H spending plan, that equates to the $27.1 million. In the top section up there, you can see the different one-time versus ongoing for each of those, the initial spending plan versus the Measure H spending plan. Okay. This is a Measure H spending plan overview breakdown. So again, we want to just show the breakdown of the funding coming in. I like to throw more numbers at you, being the budget manager. So we want to show the initial quarter of Measure H revenue at $10 million. In the initial Measure H spending plan, we obligated $4.4 million, which left the $5.52 million from that initial quarter of revenue. Adding in the estimated annual Measure H revenue for 23-24, that's another $41.8 million. Gives us a total bucket for the new fiscal year of 23-24 of $47.4 million. And then we're taking out the budget deficit. So again, when we did the budget presentation for the overview, we had a $6.1 million deficit in the general fund. So that's going to be funded through the Measure H. That leaves us proposed Measure H funding plan that we're proposing of $27.1 million. Take those out of the Measure H revenue. We have a remaining Measure H funds for future deferred maintenance costs of $14.1 million. So again, the caveat with that being that $14.1 million could change depending on labor negotiation costs and things like that. So the big thing is the labor negotiation costs. We don't know what those are going to be yet, as they're still being determined. Any questions on this? I know it's a lot of numbers to be thrown out. I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
There's the estimated annual Measure H revenue, 41,000, and then underneath it, estimated Measure H revenue, 47,000. Help me understand those.
Okay, so that's the estimated annual Measure H revenue. That's what we're estimating for the full fiscal year of 23-24.
For the 41,000 or 47?
The 41.8.
Okay.
And then the 47.4 is including the 5.5 million that we had remaining from this fiscal year, that $10 million that was remaining because we took the initial spending plan.
I got it. So when Measure H was passed, we were predicting about 31 million on Measure H. Now we're looking at about 41 million?
We were predicting 39 million initially.
39?
Yeah, and then, so again, looking at all the sales tax numbers coming in, it's gone up slightly.
Right. Great. That's good news.
Okay, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, it looks good to me. I love numbers.
Councilmember Ricky, I can't see you. He has his hand up?
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead, Councilman Ricky. You have your hand up? Yep.
Well, I think this looks good. I think over the long term, as we develop more programs to try to address homelessness, I'm hopeful that that homeless number gets bumped quite a bit. But I think you guys have done a stellar job of this. Thanks.
Move on, Steve. Okay. Thank you.
So now we're going to start kicking off the department section. So we'll start with the city attorney's office, but this is where the departments are going to start talking about their different adjustments that are going to be part of this Measure H spending plan. So they'll go through, talk about what the adjustment is and how that relates to what the improvement is going to be for the community and whether it relates to the different categories that we talked about. Okay, and then I'll come in at the end and I'll wrap it up.
Okay. Is it OC?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Chair, committee members, council members, Jose Sanchez, your city attorney. The first request, and sorry, getting the clicker.
Just have one click.
It's okay. I have the clicker now. I have all the power here. For the city attorney's office, we are requesting the additional funding to fund a deputy city attorney and a legal secretary. These would be two new positions, and the adjustment would restore positions that were eliminated in the past to help balance the budget. With the passage of Measure H, I know Steve did a great job of just discussing what was kind of the focus of the council when thinking about Measure H and the community. But it is anticipated that legal efforts will be related to quality of life services will increase. An increase in, for example, community prosecution does require attorneys to prepare pleadings, research matters, and spend quite a bit of time in court and in administrative hearings. If approved, the additional the two positions would be needed. The deputy city attorney would be the attorney mainly in charge or mainly assigned to these prosecuting roles or duties. The legal secretary would serve, would help both this attorney and our current deputy city attorney in these matters as well. The daily functions, just to give the committee an idea, would be really the main responsibilities, really working with the community prosecution team, which is really the police department, also the administrative enforcement by the neighborhood preservation unit. How the adjustments will impact the community. As mentioned already, in looking at the priorities of Measure H, the direct impacts to legal services would be kind of that community prosecution role. And in order to assist the community prosecution of the city's municipal codes for violations such as, and just naming a few, illegal dumping, graffiti abatement, blight, and nuisance conditions, this additional time would be needed. This would be help in keeping Modesto safe, clean, and well-maintained for residents and visitors to enjoy. And just to clarify, these two positions would be City of Modesto employees, so these would be here. They would not be for contract services. These would be, and the amounts for the attorney we're looking at, the position would be have the $174,488, and the legal secretary $87,506, so just under $262,000. This is additional, as the city manager mentioned. This is in addition to what the budget was that I presented earlier in the week. That was basically just trying to keep the numbers as flat as possible with the current funding. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council members?
I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead. It's Studio Break.
Is this a one-time recommended? No, this is moving
No.
for, I thought we were only considering one-time expenditures.
No, we absolutely have some ongoing expenditures that we are creating. We're just keeping it lower in the initial years, but there is ongoing expenses in Measure H.
Okay, if this were, devil's advocate here, if this were not to be approved, what would be the ramifications to the cities, to the city in general?
No, great question. We would have to basically make do with the services we currently have, which sometimes would mean probably, only having one attorney be in court, which is less of a caseload, slower in getting through kind of the current workload. The reason why the ask is just because as you look at increase, for example, police officers, or even in the MPU unit, you're looking at more administrative citations and more infractions that require this time. But if for some reason this wasn't approved, then we would just keep kind of going forward with the folks we have now and doing as much as we can.
So that would potentially create a backlog, less efficiencies. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, we do have the room or the space available in the city attorney's office for
Yes, we do.
this position? Okay. Any other questions from council members?
Yeah, how would we go about hiring these individuals? Would they be, what would your outreach be?
We would go through the recruitment process that the city currently has. Advertising, obviously you put out the advertisement, you get folks that are interested in the position applying. We would go through the interview process and really just following the normal HR process for recruitment. And again, it would be individuals hired by the city. They would be city employees here in Modesto.
Councilmember Suter-Braden.
So why the necessity for a deputy city attorney? Why not a staff city attorney?
That's just the terminology. Those are the staff.
Oh, okay. So that's an entry level.
Exactly, and it's up to a Deputy City Attorney 3, so it does give some flexibility to see kind of, who applies, right, and whether we go 1, 2, or 3, some flexibility. But those are just titles, but they're all staff attorneys, as you mentioned.
I see. Thank you.
Question I have is, instead of hiring as an employee, would there be a benefit of outsourcing this to contract?
Then that's something we thought about, of whether we just use contract services. Given the position is in court pretty much every day, like our current deputy city attorney right now, he is in court every day, John Fukasawa. It just made more sense as efficiency goes to have the person here to make sure that they are available every day for court and meetings with staff. But we thought about what was better, both financially and also just what functioned better. And this was kind of the decision for this position, given the amount of time in court, in administrative hearings, and working or having meetings with staff.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
No, sir.
If not, thank you for your report. We'll move on. Police Department. You're getting too comfortable back there.
So, Police Department. Well, good morning, Finance Committee and Chair. For the Police Department, there's several additional asks that we are asking in this upcoming budget year. The first one I want to go over is the addition of 15 police officer recruit positions for the Police Department at a cost of about $1.1 million. Historically, what we have done is anytime that we hire anybody, a police officer recruit, even though that's a non-sworn position while they go through the academy, it actually counts against our allocated positions. So we're never actually able to have the number of allocated positions out on the street handling calls for service that we claim we do, which is 210 currently, because there's always somebody in some form of training, the academy, FTO program. What this is going to allow us to do is really be able to get the closest amount possible to that fully allocated number, because these 15 police officer recruit positions wouldn't count against that sworn allocation number. Police officers go through the police academy for a 6-month period, and then once they graduate the academy, then they would become sworn police officers and count towards that academy under this ask. It takes 12 to 18 months to hire a police officer. So when we get a resignation via retirement or any other reason a police officer leaves, we typically don't hire another police officer to send to the academy until we get that resignation. So we are 12 to 18 months behind when somebody leaves the police department to have that person actually out on the street handling calls for service for our city. So this is a structural change that we would actually be able to really enhance the effectiveness of the allocated positions that we have. The next one is the addition of a police lieutenant position. In the initial budget ask that I presented earlier this week, that included the unfreezing of 8 police officer positions, 1 captain and 7 police officers that are currently frozen in this current fiscal year budget. With the unfreezing of that captain position, my hope is our staffing numbers allow this coming fiscal year is to create an area command division. And I've talked about that before, to where we group resources that deal with community problems, neighborhood issues, community policing into an area command division. Currently, even though we have an area command structure, we only have 1 lieutenant that oversees the entire city, all of 4 area commands. So this addition of the police lieutenant position would at least allow us to have 2 area commanders and be able to divide the city under those 2 area commands. They'd have 2 area commands each for the time being to be able to go out and effectively interact with neighborhoods, stakeholders, and address those community issues and resources. Things that would fall under them would be those traffic enforcement, homeless issues, dealing with those homeless issues, drug and nuisance properties in those areas. And as we talked about before, the structural rechange, NPU would also fall under the area command division. There we go. The addition of 5 community service officer positions. That is important because, as we've talked about before, with the shortage of police officers, we want to be able to handle, and the types of service that come in, having more community service officers out to be able to handle calls that don't need police officers frees up our police officers to handle things that police officers need to handle. So this is, again, if you look back, and I know I've shown charts before, if you look back to where we were in 2007 to where we are now, this is trying to move back towards that direction so we have enough resources to respond to calls for service in a timely manner, and this will enhance that ability for us to be able to do that. The addition of 4 park ranger positions, we started with 4 with the Measure H enhancements several months ago that the council approved. That was an additional 4, and now we're asking for an additional 4 on top of that. We currently have 6 of the 8 hired park rangers, so there's a lot of interest in that position, and I think we've seen a lot of initial success, and believe that by ultimately adding 4 more, giving us 12 total park rangers patrolling our parks, this is going to be allow them to be much more effective and efficient, because really with this program the success is having sustained presence in the parks by these park rangers, and with 76 different parks plus open spaces, even 12 is still a challenge to get them to deal with all the issues in our parks. The addition of 1 animal control officer position. In the past we've had 4. We're down to 2 animal control positions, so this would actually bump us up to 3 animal control positions, officer positions, and 1 supervisor, and to deal with the various animal issues that we see throughout the city on a consistent basis, which is vicious animal complaints, barking dogs, dog bites, licensing issues, stray animal collection, dead animal pickups. There's a variety of things that if we don't have a animal control officer on duty, then that, again, falls to our police officers, which takes them away from the tasks that we want them to do. The addition of 1 police civilian supervisor position, and this goes really towards our crime prevention unit. We typically, in the past, have had 4 CSOs. Currently, we have 2 positions allocated. They're not currently filled, but 2 community service officers that act as our crime prevention officers that deal with National Night Out, our Business Watch, and our Community Neighborhood Watch programs, and do a lot of different working with businesses to do our crime prevention through environmental design and assessments, and just do a lot of community events for us. Having a police civilian supervisor that oversees this unit, because as we grow in an area command division, we want to grow ultimately to 4 CSOs, 1 for each area command in the city. It's important to have a supervisor that can consistently monitor and oversee that crime prevention unit. There we go. The addition of one police civilian investigator, and this, again, goes to trying to enhance the effectiveness of what we do with our police officers. The council has previously approved two police civilian investigator positions, which we just did interviews last week and hope to bring those two on very soon. One will be in our special victims unit and one will go to our traffic unit. This one we would actually replace a CSO, so putting a CSO back on patrol and assign this to our missing persons investigation. Having a civilian investigator that can consistently deal and have the knowledge to deal with our missing persons cases, which sometimes end up turning into homicide cases and work cold cases, is an important, and having a consistent ongoing position is going to really enhance the effectiveness of this. And so we're asking for one more additional police civilian investigator. The addition of one administrative office assistant, 3, and this would go to our support division. It's currently seen by our civilian executive, and with recruitment, retention, with bringing on a lot of different high-profile projects in the future, the administrative support is going to be very important to make sure that we keep all the things together, keep all of the administrative tasks on point as we grow as a department and add on a lot of different things. Increase of the part-time budget by $150,000. We currently have approximately 37 part-time positions that really help us do a lot of different things. We hire police assistants to help in different units to help those detectives and officers and special units out. We retired annuitants we have hired back. They have a limited number of hours that they can work, but we really have them help. We have one currently helping with alcohol beverage control with our heart team. We have one out at our regional training center to help upkeep and do different things out there. So there's a lot of different functions that our part-timers help, especially when we're short-staffed. And so we're asking for an increase to that because our part-time budget is very tight at this point. And how, I think this is still me, but how the adjustment will impact the community. And really, I already talked about this piece was the Area Command Division. Bringing the lieutenant position, unfreezing the captain, is really allowing us, hopefully sooner than later, as our staffing continues to increase, to create that Area Command Division, which is just going to be a big benefit to our city and the communities that these area commands are broken into. There you go. Oh, there it goes. And then another additional ask. So with all of those positions, we talked about park rangers and the vehicles that they're going to need, cell phones, body cameras, radios, all of that stuff, there is a cost, an ongoing fleet cost, there is a cost to that. So the other additional ask is for a cost to purchase all that equipment, and some of that's ongoing. So the potential cost up to approximately $1.2 million, $2 million for the purchase of that equipment and the associated ongoing costs with that.
That's the ongoing cost of what you presented.
All of these enhancements that I just presented previously. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Scotty. Yeah. We're doing it together. There we go. And then the final ask is the build out of the Modesto Emergency Communications Center build out as we look to expand our real-time crime center, look to enhance the way that we handle mental health calls for service and respond with the appropriate resources such as our alternative response units, and just looking at how we dispatch more effectively. The ask is to allocate $2 million for the build-out of that, what we're calling the Modesto Emergency Communications Center. I think that is my last slide, and happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Any questions from council members? Go ahead, Studio.
Thank you. Great presentation, Chief. Thank you very much. Through attrition, you know your attrition numbers with your force. Does 15 recruits meet that need for upcoming adjustments that will happen in your workforce?
I think it does, and if it doesn't, I'll come back and talk to you. But really what that allows us to do is with 15 police officer recruits, these police officer recruits go through a six-month academy. The ask is for 15 fully funded positions, so it actually will allow us to have 30 police officer recruits potentially to go through the academy per year, if that makes sense. So it actually is giving us 36-month positions. And so with our attrition rate the last 3 years, there's been about 28 people that have attritioned out. We believe that that attrition rate is going to drop significantly. And so I believe that 15 allocated positions will be enough.
And I just want to note, we purposely did not add any police sworn officers because we know we can only fill so many per year. So we're filling them with police officer recruits, which is a lower salary type of position that we can slot them into. If we were to allocate